Hello, good morning, welcome. Thank you for your time and thank you for joining us today for our coffee and conversation on AWS Landing Zone, hosted by HeliCloud. On today's panel, we have Walter, CTO HeliCloud in the Netherlands, and Ivalyo, Head of Professional Services for HeliCloud from Bulgaria. Our presenters are keen to share their thoughts, their insights, and discuss best practices on AWS Landing Zone. However, we invite you all to share your questions and share your views to make this an interactive session. Throughout this webinar, please feel free to unmute your audio to interact, or if you prefer to pose a question, then the Q&A board is available on the GoToWebinar control panel. So please do make use of this Q&A board. Walter and Ivalyo will be taking time to review and to answer and to discuss all the questions posed at the end. Our webinar is being recorded and it's going to be made available to rewatch and share from our YouTube channel, where you'll also find more content from HeliCloud. We'll be keeping strict to time, and I should be passing over to Walter and Ivalyo to begin. But before I do, I will just make sure that all the audio permissions are now set to on. And so you will have the opportunity to unmute your microphone from the off. So we look forward to a great session, and I'll pass over now to Ivalyo. Many thanks.
Hi everyone, my name is Ivalyo. I'm Head of Professional Services in HeliCloud. I'm AWS consultant and engineer for almost 7 years now. Very interested in security best practices, and this is why we have this discussion today. How to build security landing zones within AWS from day one, and how to be prepared for all our applications that are going to land within those environments. We have also Walter on the line. Hi, Walter.
Hi, sorry guys for guys and maybe girls for not having my webcam on. My laptop died hard last week, and so I am on a loaner from 2012 that is not capable of sharing its webcam. However, I'm here and I'm happy to have this chat. It's a new format that we're trying, so we're very much open to input. If you have questions, unmute yourself and jump into the conversation. I think we'll just get started by simply a very simple question for those of you who are not aware of what is actually a landing zone. So, Ivalyo, maybe you can give a little bit of an introduction on what a landing zone is in like a 30-second explanation.
Yes, thanks, Walter. What is landing zone? This is a very good question. It's something that's circulating in the internet from a while ago now. The landing zone is implementation of security and industry best practices within AWS, the automated way of enabling all the security features that AWS provides us in every account that we are managing in our organization. As you know, in AWS, there is AWS organization service, which allowing us to create additional accounts. So when the new application show up in our roadmap, we have to build its account for dev, staging, production usually, and all those accounts needs to be properly configured and aligned with security best practices that AWS insists their customer to manage, because as you know, in the shared responsibility model within AWS, we are responsible for security in the cloud, so we have to configure those services to be properly set up. And of course, if this is following the automated way in the DevOps world, this is absolutely perfect. So the landing zone itself is collection of scripts which are allowing you to configure your accounts following the best practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird to me. The whole existence of something like a landing zone has always been a little bit strange. I expected when I first spun up my very first AWS account. This was I don't know, probably about 9 or 10 years ago. I expected to immediately be able to, for instance, the way it works in a DigitalOcean or whatever, to just click a button, get an instance up and running and run from there. And then to a certain extent, that is actually possible, but the reality is that very quickly you'll find out that all kinds of very basic things that have nothing to do with your workloads are actually things that you are expected to configure. And to me, it's almost strange that that isn't done by default. And I think that some of that comes from the fact that in the beginning, AWS gave you an account with IAM users, and you had multiple users that have access to your account. And there was no such thing as a multi-account strategy, so you didn't have multiple AWS accounts. So in the very beginning, a company had an AWS account, and that was the gist of it. You created for a very long time. The best practice was to have a VPC per like a production VPC and a test VPC, etc. And then as things matured, AWS said, maybe we should separate these workloads a little bit more and go to separate accounts. And then from that, it kind of got to a place where a landing zone is needed because you need multiple accounts to kind of get it to a workable stage. And so for us, it's kind of strange when we talk to customers. We tell them, hey, you need a landing zone. It will give you absolutely zero working applications on AWS. It'll just give you literally what the name implies, a landing zone that you can then land your applications on. I don't know. I found that strange always.
It's quite strange, but in AWS at the moment you have 175 services which are independent services from each other, and somehow you have to be prepared and configure your environments on the extent where your employees, when they start deploying applications, they're following the best pattern, and they're protected. Imagine what will happen if you have to be compliant against one of the industry standards, again, for example, against PCI DSS. You would like all your accounts to be pre-configured to be able to monitor if you are compliant for PCI DSS, or to apply preventative controls and detective controls if you are drifting for such type of configuration that are not permitted within the standard.
Yeah. There's a first question from Nick. I don't want to make this too much commercial. Obviously, HeliCloud has a landing zone that we provide to our customers as a thing that they can buy. A lot of engineering went into it. So Nick is asking, is HeliCloud's landing zone built on top of AWS's landing zone or a separate thing? So it's important to understand, if you're unfamiliar with the landing zone concept, that landing zone is an AWS concept. It's not something that HeliCloud invented. It's not something that's even unique to AWS. It's just that AWS Landing Zone is a specific opinionated design for how you should set up a multi-account strategy in order to be secure, scalable, and ready for diverse workloads. HeliCloud's Landing Zone is basically as Ivalyo said, a set of Terraform scripts. We are a Terraform shop, so we mostly use Terraform for automating things. It's a whole set of Terraform modules and code that allows us to very quickly reproduce a landing zone setup across different customers. And so it's not necessarily built on top of AWS's landing zone. It follows the best practices that AWS has, and then adds a bunch of stuff onto it.
As an addition to what Walter just said, all those scripts are combined in CI/CD Pipeline. We are using Cold Star toolsets. So the pipelines are built on top of the Cold Pipeline, Cold Build, and we have 4 pipelines that are deploying the whole landing zone, creating additional accounts with account vending machine, deploying all the configuration within the account with general blueprints. And as Walter described, we are following the AWS best practices, and we are also enriching those best practices with from our experience, because we have deployed the landing zone for many customers now. We are doing it from more than 3 years, which is which allowing us to know where exactly we have to apply additional controls, or how we can become better protected in that field.
Yeah, I think to illustrate a little bit, we just yesterday and today I've been in a conversation with an existing customer, and we have a consultant there that's helping them, or we have 2 consultants there that's helping them build their AWS environment. And the consultants came to me and said, hey, Walter, we realized that the tasks that this customer is asking us to complete actually are all the little building pieces that together consist or create a landing zone. Shouldn't we tell them, hey, we have a landing zone that you could deploy here? And the key to understand is that you can build a landing zone yourself, no problem. But the advantage of doing it with our landing zone is that it's a repeatable thing that we've perfected over many deployments and over many years. And so the amount of engineering effort that went into that is quite significant, and that's the only difference. But in theory, there is no rocket science in the stuff that we've done. Okay, cool. So we went through what a landing zone is and how it came to be. One of the questions is, do you absolutely need a landing zone? If you're planning to run a production workload on AWS, you'd probably be best off doing it now. Bolting a landing zone on top of an existing AWS environment is significantly more difficult than doing it the other way around. Ivalyo, do you have any experience on reverse engineering, not reverse engineering, but post first workloads creating the landing zone? Because it's very simply something that a lot of companies run into later on in their path. Hey, we've deployed a few things. Hey, I see this mention of a landing zone here everywhere. Let's look at what that actually means. Oh crap, we need this.
Every account can be incorporated in the landing zone at a later stage. The issues that you can face on that integration is, for example, if you have enabled the CloudTrail on an uncorrected way, or with improper configuration, you have to go there and dig what's happening within the account, delete the current configuration and reconfiguring. If this is production, probably is directly related with downtime. So some of the CloudTrail works will not be delivered in the time that you are integrating the your main account, your current account with the landing zone, because we have to stop the CloudTrail, delete all the configurations, and then reapply it from the account landing machine.
Yeah, coincidentally, Kevin is asking, what are the main challenges when moving to a landing zone from a large existing estate with many AWS accounts? I have a data point for that. We have a customer in the Netherlands, a large organization that has many different disjointed business units, and in there, they didn't necessarily go to a landing zone that specifically. They didn't, for instance, take our landing zone, but they wanted to adopt the concept of a landing zone. And one of the big challenges when you have an organization with already many existing AWS accounts is to unite them all under a single AWS organization, because it's one of the first steps that is needed in order to apply policies across these accounts, and that's quite the challenge.
And as an addition to what Walter said, I have another recommendation also. So we know that something when we do something without a well-established process and tested following the industry best practice or following the recommendations from AWS, we can stop doing it now, introduce landing zone, keep all the current accounts where they are, but every new account to be produced from the landing zone in order to be sure that you're starting you start streamlining the landing zone configuration to every upcoming account, and in the parallel of that, you can start the integration between those existing accounts at the moment under the main organization that is created from the landing zone. This is another path that you can choose, and probably in the 2-3 quarters from the beginning, you will end up with everything unified within AWS.
Yeah, what this customer did was quite interesting, actually. They initially started to suggest, hey, maybe you should join our AWS organization. Then they started to make their wording a little bit stronger. And in the end, there was a couple of handfuls of, this was an organization with 200 accounts. So it's really quite significant. And in the end, what they did is they created a dashboard that's visible for everyone in the company, naming the accounts that were not yet part of the AWS organization. And it's kind of delicate in the sense that you need to make sure that your messaging is correct. But if you do this in a friendly way, you can make it visible to people, and nobody likes to see their account as one of the 5 accounts that's left that needs to join an AWS organization. So that's how they ended up doing it without too much centralized pressure. Nick is asking, is there any solution on migrating existing VPCs into VPC sharing through a dedicated network account? Yeah, the networking in AWS has become a significantly more complicated topic as time went on and people's networking requirements changed. And I think some of the most complicated problems we see arise from VPCs and interconnectivity between VPCs as well as between a data center, other clouds, you name it. That's a complicated problem.
I can answer on this one as well. If you have existing VPC and you want to attach to a predefined networking account with VPC that has transit gateway configured on that account, you can very easily configure transit gateway attachment within the existing VPC and change your routing tables on that VPC. This usually is done for the private subnets to route through the transit gateway. This is the easiest way to be done. If you want to integrate it with the landing zone, you have to our team, we have to play with the current configuration, import it within Terraform, and start managing everything from with the code base.
Yeah, so I think one of the important parts here is that the landing zone by itself, the way AWS landing zone works, and as well our landing zone, it does not deploy any actual workload. So it sets up a lot of the scaffolding and the infrastructure that you need in order to do this. So even things like a transit gateway, like the transit gateway itself and the fully configured version of the transit gateway are not necessarily part of the landing zone itself. You can have networking accounts with the correct permissions set up, but the idea is that a landing zone can be deployed for literally, the same landing zone can be deployed for literally any company that wants to do AWS. And after you deploy the landing zone, then you start customizing it for specific customers or specific environments or whatever it is you want to do.
Yeah, but in our default configuration, we usually suggest customers to start with the transit gateway because if they don't do it from the day one, probably they will realize in X amount of time from the deployment that this is the best enterprise architecture for the networking within AWS. So there is no other way to inter-VPC connect to arrange inter-VPC connectivity between, let's say, 10, 12. It's becoming a nightmare if you have to spin up a VPC peering, because you have to, there is no transitivity between VPC, so you have to connect every single VPC with every other VPC with VPC peering, and this is becoming a really nightmare for managing it.
Yeah, this is exactly why I asked that question. So we grew and grew, and before VPC, the decent transit gateway service was set up, we tried a transit VPC to handle it. Didn't really work out, and now we've got a pretty decent sized networking with multiple accounts and multiple VPCs that need to be able to talk to each other, because one VPC for AD and then keeping that separate, one of them for production, one of them for a different region that needs to talk to each other. So I would just love a centralized account that has the transit gateway and has all those VPCs defined there, so we can have a nice and clean overview of what is running where and what subnets are available, what data ranges are available.
Yeah, and in addition to that, you can connect your on-premise VPNs if you have on-premises, of course. If you're not extended only on AWS, you can connect your client VPNs on that networking account. This is the reason why we are recommending our customers to start with that approach from day one, because in the end, they will find out that it's becoming more and more complex when you grow in AWS. And from reInvent 2019, you have also possibilities to connect two transit gateways into different regions. So you can actually managing multi-regions with such an architecture as well.
It's really a network design in AWS is a huge topic that we probably can do easily a separate clinic on. One of the things that really strikes me is that this is not unique to AWS, but I've seen this across my IT career over the last 20 years, that if you are an early adopter to technology, that's really great because you can build up knowledge while the rest is still figuring it out. At the same time, you're also screwing yourself because of this problem that you highlighted, Nick, that you've done all of this stuff before Transit Gateway was even a thing, and now you're facing all kinds of troubles that if you were to start today, all the documentation and best practices clearly outline how you should be approaching this problem, but that's of no help to organizations that have such a history on AWS that they predate any of that stuff.
Yeah, but if you look at it from the other side, you have first-hand experience how difficult is the other way to do it. So you can always recommend to your employees, to your customers, that this is very difficult to be implemented. Please follow the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this with, I used to do a lot of Puppet, and Puppet had exactly this problem. You had Puppet 0.24, which could do basic things, and then they expanded capabilities over and over and over, and then at some point the difference between Puppet 1 and Puppet 2 came about, and the difference was so big that we used to do a lot of Puppet consulting, and we would just recommend people that would come to us with specific problems to just start all over on Puppet 2, because the architecture of their Puppet code base was so not in line with the best practices that came in later versions that it's just impossible to slowly migrate. You have to kind of rebuild and then redeploy. It's not as big of a task as it sounds, because Puppet is relatively modular, but I've seen more than one company spending ungodly amount of money and time into not getting any new functionality, but be able to move forward into the future with the best practices. And that's I see that same thing happening with AWS.
Yeah, not to be negative, I do want to share that our implementation of Landing Zone, which AWS helped us with, is saving us an incredibly amount of time. All the centralized logging of the different cloud trails. The easier way of managing guardrails, the centralized portal of different services, not everything. So AWS config still is a pain to do, but things like guard duty and the security hub, billing, those are all centralized now in the master billing account, and just make it easy to just have a single pane of glass to look at when you're managing the entire infrastructure. So highly encouraging landing zone just for those reasons.
For sure.
And Nick, I assume you have also aggregated views from most of the services that you just described in your security or main account.
Yeah, so what we do, and then we have a couple of other third-party tools that just scrapes all the accounts, or lambdas that scrape all the accounts and get everything either in the centralized logging account or in the master billing account to try to get as much into those two accounts as possible. We did also move to a separate security account. So our security guys don't have access to the master billing account, but still can have a single pane of glass when it comes to inspector and to guard duty and such.
Yeah, the way how we do it in our interpretation of landing zone is we are configuring the aggregated views within the main account, but we stream all the walks that are important from our perspective to monitor what's happening on AWS in separate logging account, and from there we are ingesting them into our security information and event management system. So if you would like to have full visibility of what's happening, with the ability to search, correlate walks, and find out what's happening in one service and then map it to another, this is the way how you can do it. And we usually building landing zone prepared for integrating every SIEM system from there, and we grant permissions to security team to the SIEM system.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, so we have a internally created and designed a SIEM that seamlessly integrates with the landing zone. But then that same large customer I was talking about, they have a dual cloud strategy for some unknown reason. And they've created a SIEM on the Azure side, and they're streaming all the logs to from AWS to Azure. Obviously, incurring costs, but considering they have to choose one place where to aggregate them, that's how they did it, and that's an entirely valid thing, and it falls within the landing zone design. We have one more question. In theory, this section is a half an hour, but we can go a few minutes over time. Kevin is asking, what are the considerations for landing zones when your organization has multiple operational teams who have their own autonomy? That's a good question. I think that Nick already touched on it. The idea exactly with the landing zones is that each team gets their own account. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but that is an option that you have. So you, in a large organization, you have anywhere from a couple accounts to hundreds of accounts. I've even asked a question online once, and there was somebody responding who had 2,000 accounts sitting in their AWS organization. That is an entirely possible thing. The beauty of the landing zone is that then the CloudTrail logs from each account that you create for each operational team are automatically streamed to your logging account. So it's safe and secure, and your security team and your incident response people can search through the aggregated logs of different accounts and see much more easily what's going on. So for landing zone or for a large complex organization, that's exactly why landing zone was designed, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Point out.
Sorry?
absolutely straight in the point. This is why landing zone are needed. If you managing only one account for with dev purpose here, spinning up instances just to test some code, probably you don't need landing zone. But if you plan to have multiple accounts with multiple teams in production for production environments, you definitely need landing zone, and you have to consider the benefits behind that.
Yeah, on that point, if you have a small AWS bill, be careful with a landing zone because it incurs AWS costs just like the rest of everything that you're using. And so I'm talking about like this, the $2,000 and below kind of AWS account. If that's your current usage and you add a landing zone, you're going to incur a relatively steep increase in costs. Whereas if you have a larger organization, the absolute increase in cost will stay roughly the same, but it will be relatively much more smaller bit because of the fact that you already have a large bill. So that is definitely something to keep in mind for smaller.
Yeah, I can give some exact numbers here. Because we just completed 2 landing zone implementation for our customers, and I wanted to see how much they cost. For a naked landing zone without any applications working on it, and actively utilizing AWS environments from logging, searching in logs, things like that. Because the landing zone is collecting cloud logs. So how much if you are using AWS console more and more, that will introduce more and more logs, so your price will increase. But for the empty landing zone, on the way we deliver to a customer, the price is between 200 and 300 bucks.
Yeah, and this is AWS cost, of course.
Yeah, it's AWS cost.
Pure AWS bills that that you incur because of having a landing zone. And then if you add more accounts, of course, that amount will increase, but it won't be increasing linearly. So it's increasing by little bits and pieces if you add more accounts. But of course, $300 on a $1,000 bill matters a whole of a lot more than $3,000 on a $50,000 or $100,000 bill. So it is something to keep in mind if you're in a smaller organization. Okay, we are a little bit over time. You can find attached to this call also a handout with the landing zone fact sheet. We're making a recording, so Amy will after this send out the recording as well, so you can view it or send it across to other people if you find this useful. Yeah, Amy, do you want to close up?
Yeah, super. And thank you everybody for your questions. Thanks for shaping our coffee and conversation this morning. And thanks to Walter and Ivalyo for sharing your thoughts on AWS Landing Zone and for presenting. Upon exiting this webinar, you will receive a really short, quick survey. We'd love to hear your feedback on topics that you want to hear more about from us. And all that's left to say is thanks for joining, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you again soon. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone. Stay safe. Cheers. Bye bye.